There are so many things that Niantic could do to make Pokémon GO a much better game, but over the years, it seems like Niantic has not necessarily focused on the right things, and that has frustrated a lot of Pokémon GO players. In this video, I'm going to be counting down 25 quality of life changes that the Pokémon GO community has frequently brought up. Alright, so with that said, let's get right into it. Alright, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokémon GO video. Today we're going to be counting down 25 quality of life improvements that we all want to see come to Pokémon GO. Of course, some of the things that I'm going to be talking about at one point was a part of Pokémon GO, but for one reason or another, Niantic completely changed it. Needless to say, Pokémon GO is in a very weird place. There are a lot of things that Niantic has done over the years, like giving us a ready button for raids and different things like that. So yeah, it does seem like Niantic is fully aware that there are improvements that they could do that end up being considered by Niantic's higher ups. But we should be trepidatious because Niantic has a really bad history of not improving their game. So yeah, hopefully one day we will see some of these improvements, but it's probably safe to be doubtful that we'll ever see any of these quality of life changes. So let's start off with the first quality of life change, and that is mass gift opening. This is something that a lot of players have wanted for the longest time, mainly because the process of opening up gifts is incredibly tedious. So having a way to select a bunch of trainers and opening their gifts simultaneously would do wonders for Pokémon GO. Speaking of friends, the next quality of life improvement that a lot of players have been asking for is long distance trades for lucky friends. I really feel like this is something that should happen considering how hard it is to get lucky friends in the first place. And then for a lot of people, they're not even within the same city with some of these players. So these very special trades often go to waste. And this is something that Niantic could fix by adding a mechanic that will allow you to trade with lucky friends from a long distance. Next, and this is one of my personal favorite quality of life improvements that I would like to see come to Pokémon GO, and that is the ability to lock certain Pokémon in your Pokémon storage. Basically, we want the capability to set a Pokémon so that it could never be purified or evolved or powered up, so that it could be as it currently is. This would alleviate a lot of anxiety that some players will have regarding some of their best Pokemon, and on top of that, I really do not see the harm of having a mechanic like this. Like, you could have it as a toggle where you could lock a Pokemon, and you could also unlock it as well. That way, you'll stop having different situations where players will accidentally purify some of their most powerful Shadow Pokemon, or they accidentally power up one of their best Pokemon for the Go Battle League. Those are some of the most heartbreaking things to happen to any Pokémon GO player, and Niantic could prevent that by adding a lock Pokémon feature. Now, kind of coinciding with mass gift opening, we should also have the ability to mass trade. I really like the idea of being able to trade multiple Pokemon to a single player. That way, you're not just sitting there going through hours and hours of just trading Pokemon, especially for players who are trying to get their pilot medals or hit a couple of lucky trades. This sort of functionality would do wonders for Pokémon GO, and it would make something like trading a lot more streamlined. Now, another quality of life improvement that I want to see get added to Pokémon GO is, of course, the capability to save your outfits. Like, one of the fun aspects of Pokémon GO that not a lot of players pay attention to is, of course, the look of your avatar. And I really feel like collecting outfits is an aspect of Pokémon GO that is often underrated. And I think Niantic could do something about that by allowing players to save various outfits. It would basically be a cosmetic loadout for your character, and I really like the idea of something like that being in this game. Now, another quality of life improvement that I would like to see, and something that actually is really helpful for someone like me, is the ability to use potions and revives en masse, so you're not sitting there just constantly clicking on potions and tapping Pokemon that are hurt. If you have a bunch of low HP Pokemon after doing a whole bunch of Team Go Rocket battles or gym battles, it would be really nice if you could just press a button and have all of them get revived and restored to full health, and they just use your best potions in order to get it done. Again, this would just be alleviating a lot of the tedious aspects of Pokémon GO, and I really feel like something like this would be great for everyday players. Now, I think another quality of life improvement that Pokémon GO would greatly benefit from is, of course, some kind of alert that would tell you that you just came across a perfect IV Pokémon. This would, of course, happen in the catch screen, and I would imagine it would work just like with XXL Pokémon and XXS Pokémon. Like, basically, it would alert you that this is going to be a perfect appraisal. That way, when you're just clicking on Pokémon and doing shiny checks, you won't miss out on those 100% IVs. Honestly, there is a sense of excitement of coming across a shiny or an XXL Pokemon, so I really like the idea of there being another alert that would tell you that it is a very special Pokemon, and definitely when it comes to Hundos, those are extremely rare and extremely special to any Pokemon Go player. Now, the next quality of life improvement is of course something that is very basic and something that a lot of players have been actively wanting, and that is the game preventing you from inviting players to raids when they have already hit the remote raid limit. Very often, especially on Wednesday raid hours, players will burn through their 5 remote raid limit pretty quickly, so I really don't like the idea that when you're inviting your friends to a raid, you will still be able to invite players who can't even join your raid because they already hit the limit, and they don't even tell you who those players are. You just have to spend time to go back into the invite screen and invite other players. I really think it would streamline the raiding experience if they prevented you from inviting people who have already hit their 5 remote raid limit. Now, the next quality of life improvement is actually relevant. I really feel like Niantic needs to improve the Today tab. Ever since Niantic introduced this feature, it has been a staple to every Pokemon Go player. It's a way for them to keep tabs with what's going on within Pokemon Go, and it's also where you would find limited timed researches, as well as seasonal bonuses and different things like that. But of course, it can get cluttered pretty quickly if you have a lot of things going on. So I really like the idea of them revamping the Today tab to make it a lot better and a lot more organized. I really think players should be able to customize their Today tab to show certain things above others. There are some players who prioritize Pokestop showcases, for example, and you have to scroll all the way to the bottom in order to check and see where your Pokemon are ranked, and I really feel like something like that is just not really good design for Pokemon Go. So yeah, this is a really big one, and I really hope they come up with something, because having the Today tab is actually a really good thing, but using it right now is incredibly frustrating. Next up, this is probably the one quality of life improvement that most players have asked for at one point or another in their lifetime, and that is the capability to delete eggs that they're holding on to. Tell me how many times you've came across this particular scenario. Let's say there is an event that's about to drop that's going to have some really special Pokemon in 7-kilometer eggs. The only problem is that all of the eggs that you are holding are a bunch of 5-kilometer eggs and 10-kilometer eggs with Pokemon that you do not care about. Basically, you have to walk upwards of 50 to even 75 kilometers just to clear out your egg list so that you can get a bunch of new eggs. I really think it would benefit every single Pokemon Go player if they can pick and choose which eggs they want to actually incubate. Now, going back to remote raids, I really feel like Niantic should consider increasing or completely removing the daily limit for how many remote raids you can do. Yeah, we've had this discussion constantly for the past several months. Ever since Niantic nerfed remote raids, this has been a core controversy within the Pokemon Go community, and I really feel like it's something that Niantic should alleviate. If they still want to keep a hard cap on how many remote raids you could do daily, I'm perfectly fine with that. But at the same time, I really feel like they're being way too stingy by only allowing us to do 5 of them. I think it would be a good middle ground if they were to up it to about 10 remote raids per day, especially for the hardcore players who want to get certain shinies and do a lot of certain raids. I think that would be really beneficial, especially for rural players as well. Now, coinciding with quality of life changes that we used to have, we should also be getting the 1 Pokecoin bundles back in the game. This is something that was really good for pretty much every Pokemon Go player, especially those who live in rural areas. It kept the game fresh and it kept the game interesting, and it was one of those mechanics that brought players into the game every single day. That's something that Niantic has kind of lost when it comes to Pokemon Go. There really isn't any kind of mechanics that draws players in to play daily, and as of right now, it's really just focused on features and event bonuses, which, if there's an event that people do not care about, not a lot of players will even log into the game. But at least with the 1 Pokecoin bundle, it was the carrot on a stick to get players to at least log in every single day, and that's something Niantic needs to consider. And of course, another quality of life change that I would like to see return to Pokemon Go is having the spawn rate for incense be reduced to 1 minute. During the pandemic, it was one of the best bonuses that we had when it came to Pokemon Go, and incense was actually a useful item once again. And I think Pokemon Go players have been wanting this bonus to return to Pokemon Go for the longest time, and I really do think it's going to be beneficial for the game as well as the player base if Niantic were to consider bringing this bonus back. Another pandemic era quality of life change that I would like to see return is of course 6-hour community days. I really feel like this is something that Niantic will never consider doing, but but I really did miss having 6-hour community days. The flexibility of having 6-hour community days was just something that was very popular among the Pokemon Go community, and ever since they reverted it back to 3 hours, it felt like a lot of players were no longer interested with these monthly events. And on top of that, they tried to alleviate it with another pay-to-win mechanic, which is of course those 4-star raids. And even those are incredibly buggy and they're not always reliable. So I really feel like all Niantic should do is just go back to the 6-hour model. I think that would be the best way to go. Now, the next quality of life improvement was something that was in the game, but it was removed even before the pandemic bonuses. And this is having legendaries and research breakthroughs. The reality of Pokemon Go is that it's going to be incredibly difficult for rural players as well as free-to-play players to keep up with the hardcore players. Outside of spending money on raid passes, there really is no realistic avenue for you to get hundos and high IVs for some of the most powerful legendaries. But at least if they were to include legendaries and research breakthroughs again, I think that would definitely help a lot of those players who do not have access to a whole bunch of raids. Alright, now the next quality of life improvement is something that I personally wanted, and that is the capability to set different Pokemon loadouts. I think it's incredibly tedious and incredibly frustrating that if you want to use different moves in the Go Battle League or in raid battles, you basically have to reorganize your Pokemon with TMs every single time. Like, it's incredibly frustrating, especially if you have dual type Pokemon, where it is considered the most powerful of a particular type, but it can also be used as a viable raid attacker or PvP Pokemon using the other type. I think it would just be a lot more convenient and a lot simpler if they were to have different loadouts that you can have. Now, another quality of life change that I would like to see come to Pokemon Go is the capability to do practice PvP battles. Like, these would basically be PvP battles that are unranked, and they wouldn't do anything, like they wouldn't give you rewards or anything like that. But you could practice certain teams and certain matchups, and you could bring it into the ranked battles, and I think this would be something great for pretty much anyone who's engaged in the Go Battle League. Now, the next quality of life improvement would be something you would see on the map or something you would access in a separate menu tab, and that is a Pokemon bank system. As of right now, whatever Pokemon you want to hold on to, it's basically all going to be in your Pokemon storage. And yeah, you could utilize different tags and different sorting options and different naming conventions to sort and organize all of your Pokemon, but I really like the idea of there being a Pokemon bank just like in the mainstream games, where any Pokemon that you are not currently using, you could store them somewhere without ever having to transfer them. Now, speaking of the mainline games, this is something that a lot of players have suggested over the years, and that is having Pokemon centers in the in-game world. It would basically be another point of interest just like gyms and Pokestops, but it would be a way for you to heal up all of your Pokemon without having to use revives and potions. Considering that it could be really difficult, especially for lower level players, to keep their revives and potions replenished, I really like the idea of there being a Pokestop of sorts that will actually heal up all of your damaged Pokemon. Not only would that be convenient, but it would add a lot of flavor to the in-game world, and that's something that the game has needed for a long time. Now, the next quality of life improvement is one that I don't often see get discussed, but I really do think it could be good for people who have low-end devices, and that is to have a standard definition mode. Basically, what it would do is it would be a game mode within Pokemon Go that would lower the graphics settings so that older devices and low-end devices will be able to handle this game without draining through the battery. And of course, a lower resolution so that these devices do not overheat or just completely drain out the battery. Alright, now we're in the final stretch for all these quality of life improvements. Now, the next one that I would like to see added to Pokemon Go is of course a complete overhaul of the current gym battling system. It's probably the one aspect of Pokemon Go that has been untouched for a long time. Yes, at one point there was a big gym revamp, but I really feel like that revamp has been outdated for the longest time. I think it would be really great for Pokemon Go if they were to freshen up gym battles and actually made them relevant once again. Now, the next two quality of life improvements are basically items that I feel like at one point or another players have asked for, and some of them might be things that you probably don't want to see in Pokemon Go, but at the same time it would definitely make the game a lot more convenient. The first of these is of course the Shiny Charm. Now, this item, if you were to equip it, would give you an increased chance at getting shinies. I honestly don't know how Niantic would implement an item like this while keeping the game balanced, but I imagine it would be a premium item that would be a consumable with a limited duration, kind of like incense and lucky eggs. Maybe when you use the item, it will give you a minuscule increase to the shiny rate of every single Pokemon that could potentially be shiny. It could be a great way for people who are Shundo hunters or people who are looking for a particular shiny, especially in raid battles, and I think if Niantic were to add an item like this, it would definitely be popular within the Pokemon Go community. Now the next item that I wanted to talk about is probably going to be a little bit more controversial, and that is, of course, bottle caps. In the mainstream games, if you wanted to adjust the IVs of a particular Pokemon, you could use an item called a bottle cap. You wouldn't have too many of these in your bags, but when you use them, you would actually increase one of the stats of a Pokemon's IVs. Of course, an item like this would probably not be popular, especially among hardcore players, because it would completely ruin the rarity of a lot of their favorite Pokemon in their collection. But I do think an item like this would level the playing field, especially for people who are struggling in stuff like the Master League. Again, I don't know how Niantic would implement it, but if it were to be added into the game, I'm sure there'd be a lot of players who would be really happy about it. This is something that was a staple of the mainline games for the longest time, and I really think Pokemon Go would be a game that would benefit from a similar system. It would definitely be popular within the Pokemon Go community. Now the last two quality of life improvements are of course related to trading. I really like the idea of them adding something like a trading post or having a world trading market. And then finally, the last Pokemon Go quality of life update that I'm sure a lot of players would want is of course Wonder Trades. This is a feature within the mainline games that allowed you to trade with random players with random Pokemon. It was an exciting way for you to get some really cool Pokemon or to offload a lot of Pokemon that you do not want. I mean, maybe Wonder Trades is something that Niantic is planning to implement at some point or another, but I really do not know when that would be or how they would do it, but I imagine it would coincide with a worldwide marketplace, so maybe we'll get the last two quality of life improvements simultaneously in a future update, but we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, there you have it. This was 25 quality of life improvements that I would like to see get added to Pokemon Go, and I'm sure a lot of other players would like to see them as well. If there is a particular quality of life improvement that I did not discuss in this video, definitely share what it is in the comments section down below. I would love to know what you are thinking regarding quality of life improvements, and yeah, I think we can have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be informative, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons on my Patreon family, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then do consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel non-monetarily, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the following platforms. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.